say you have a likely subject for me to talk about. Yeah, yours. Okay, I'm just going to leave this here if that's okay. This one here. Oh, Mamma Mia. No one else that I said that too? Okay. Because it seems to me there's a lot there that could be, there's a lot I could say. I wonder if that's going to stay for me. Okay, so this is what Shirley's going to be working on here, and she's already started, obviously. And this is one of those compositions that she's going to try to make interesting. This has a personal significance to her. It's maybe not the thing that somebody walking down the street would say, I've got to paint that. But there's some nice components in it. It's got some interesting angles. But she's going to have to play with it to make it more than just a snapshot. Okay, are you following me on that? Mm-hmm. So she's got a background, which is a house with the bushes in front of it. And then she's got a middle ground, which involves staircase leading from there, and then the slope of the rock garden. Her focal point, I guess, right, is the light post. Mm-hmm. This is kind of a problematic picture because the light post itself, I think it's probably natural to say everybody doesn't. We don't look at the post. We look at the light at the top, right? Isn't that what we look at? This could be a laundry pole or anything. So our eye wants to go up there. Now here's where there's a challenge in this composition. Mm-hmm. This is starkly lit just by default because there's really no direct light in here. But it's a white pole surrounded by relatively dark foliage. So it's sort of like a slash across the paper here. But do you notice what happens when you get to the top? I lose it. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of trouble discerning the lantern top. And I just don't think it's interesting enough to look at a lamp pole without the lamp on top. I want to see the whole thing. I want it to be a picture of the lamppost, or the lamppost in its setting. So that means that as lovely as this color might be, it can't remain either that color or that value. Something has to change in it because there's just not enough contrast between it and the surrounding area. Now I know as I walk around I say, well, what's your focal point to people? And some of you, like Pat, I'll point out to you where your focal point is. We were talking about yours too. If you have a focal point, you have to make it the focal point. Just because your eye goes there because it's a photograph of something you love doesn't mean that your viewer is going to look at that. So we want to highlight that somehow. We want to put the spotlight on this pole. Best way to do that is to increase contrast between the focal point and the surrounding. You can do that through color, but you definitely need to do it through value in this case. So if you wanted to retain, this is sort of a brickish red. If she wanted to make a beautiful, like an Indian red or something like that, and then dilute it quite a bit, and then apply that over the pure paper so it's shown forward, that would probably be a fairly good way to do it. Another way, it's a light post. Why not make a light emanating from it? Doesn't have to be this time of day, which is very indeterminate. This could be dusk, it could be the morning, it could be a gloomy day. There's really not a light source in here. So you can make a light source. Something to illuminate one side of it all the way down, or light emanating from the top. But something needs to happen to this to make it worthy of being a painting, and it needs some contrast to the top. Or what happens is, I bet you if you stood across the room and you glanced over here, all you would see would be a white slash, and that's it. Now, even this area down here, it's attractive, but I think that there's going to have to be some decisions made there too in terms of value. There's a nice little garden going on here. There's lots of beautiful blues, but it's all kind of lost into one large medium dark mass with a few occasional flowers and then this little bit of light here. The light flowers are nice against that. But if you all squint your eyes, I bet you see a bunch of white flowers, a stick, and then back there.
Yeah.
And that's it, because this is an example of a photograph that has no middle values to speak of. It's got a lot of number 9s and it's got a lot of number 1s, and then very few things are in between. So in this case, you're going to have to make some decisions. What is going to be your middle ground? There has to be something that is more than just the darkest dark and the lightest light. Because what happens is when you eliminate the middle values, which most of you tend to live in too much, but if you eliminate that, you approach line work. It starts to look extremely abstract, and it looks more like a drawing, black and white, black and white. And the subtleties are lost, okay? And when you have something that has a lot of texture like this, you're relying on the subtlety of the different types of grasses, the round, soft edges, and those hard ones. You want those things to be read, and we can't read them if they're all dark or all real light. So you're going to have to introduce and make some decisions about what plane is going to be the middle ground for that. I think that might be all I have to say about that. I can't stress you're not introducing high contrast somewhere in your picture. You're removing all of the highs and the lows and introducing a lot of middles there. So just be very aware of that, and be intentional about where you put the contrast. Pick the thing that you think needs to be important, and then design your picture around that. Don't just copy a photograph. Design your art. Look for that thing, build contrast there. Gina. Yes, ma'am. What did I do? Gina has planes in there. Look at what a booger is this picture.
What is it?
It is a beautiful, complex picture of an extreme close-up of grape leaves and vines and the grape cluster. But this is very, very shallow space, as opposed to this has some depth to it. Pat Ryan's has a lot of depth to it. It's miles of landscape. This one here is like dealing with the 6 inches in front of your face. That's all it is. But even so, I think it's worthwhile to look at it in terms of planes and design it that way. There's got to be something that's closer to you. There's got to be a middle ground, and there's got to be a background. And I know you don't want to hear this, but you got to pick a focal point. And you have to increase the contrast around that. Otherwise, it becomes wallpaper, unless that's what you're going for. And maybe some of you are going to say, well, the heck with it. Now I'm painting wallpaper. But I think that if the grapes are truly the focal point here, were you doing it like this format? Where it's
Yeah.
like this? Okay. If the grapes are the focal point, well, they offer a fair amount of contrast, or could, just because of their color, and they do possess some of the darker areas there, but it's a very off-balance composition. Were you doing it this way? Okay. It's rather off-balance, so this is an opportunity to intentionally design. If you're going to have darks here, instead of doing dib-dabby darks everywhere, which I talked about last week, you want to do shapes. So if this is going to be dark, maybe you want to make part of the shape come down here, or maybe you want a shape here to help ground it, something for some balance.